We're going to go a different direction for a minute. I'm going to do several videos on politics. Not something I like to do, not something I plan to stay with for long. To me, picking my favorite politician is like picking my favorite prostate exam. It's just that they equate about the same for me. And really, it's because, one, the people in power tend to treat us in a certain way, and two, we tend to let them. And the general public is not terribly bright in how we handle our political. I'm losing my word. Anyway, our political intellect, our learnedness. That's so not the word I wanted, but whatever. You get what I'm saying. It's not that we're incapable. It's that we're lazy, and we go off feeling rather than doing the work. And but that's for a different video. And there are going to be several videos, but this video is different. This video has a specific purpose. There is a specific thing I want to talk about, and it's because we're being lied to. And if I can go find the truth in it, anybody can, because I am not politically literate. I am not. I don't. I'm not. I'm just not good at it. To that end, what you'll also see if you look at what I've done in the titles and comments and whatever and all that, I'm not real tech savvy either. But I'm going to tag a lot of people. I'm going to tag a lot of people who are much more savvy in the political realm than I am. And then I'm going to tag some people who are in the political realm, and I'm going to do it from both sides because I'm not trying to create just an echo chamber. And maybe they'll have time to respond, maybe they won't, but that's the hope, is that they will see it and have time to come on and say, hey, you're right, and this, or you're wrong because this, or, they'll go in a different direction or whatever, and then, of course, some of these people, I'll be honest, I just kind of like to collab with, so maybe it'll just get their attention for that purpose. Hint, hint, tossing it out there. But I'm also going to tag some people who are probably not going to like the video from a political standpoint, because they are some of the people who are perpetrating the lies. And so I want to see if they have any responses and want to state their case. And then I'm going to tag some people who are more spiritual realm type people, because at the end of the video, I'm going to tie this into spiritual, because that's really the basis of my content, is to tie things to the spiritual thing. So I apologize, this video is going to go long. It's already going long, and I will keep it as concise as I can, but there's information that I think is really actually pertinent and needs to be said. So first thing I'm going to do, and I'm talking about, if you haven't picked up on it, I'm talking about the SAVE Act. There's been a lot of buzz about the SAVE Act, and it's going through Congress right now and being talked about, and people are talking about call your lawmakers and tell them how to vote on it, and this and that, and so there's been all this buzz about, if the SAVE Act passes, then if you don't have a passport, then you're not going to be able to vote, and if you're a married woman and your last name is now different from your birth certificate, then you're not going to be able to vote. And they're trying to rob the rights of millions of people to vote. And no, that's not true. The truth is, they are trying to restrict people from voting. The people they're trying to restrict from voting are people who do not have a legal right to vote. The people who can still vote are the people who are legal citizens of the nation and have always been the ones who should be voting. They're just trying to weed out those who should not be. And that's the purpose of the act. So the thing that got me on this line is an acquaintance of mine. I actually posted here a while back, and he he went hardline on this from that view, from the whole people are being robbed of their right to vote. And I challenged him. I said, are you just saying that, or have you actually read the act? Now, at the time that I challenged him, I hadn't read it. And so I didn't challenge saying you're wrong. I simply asked, have you read it, or are you just regurgitating what someone else told you? Well, he didn't actually answer that question, but he did post a link to the act. And so I came back and I said, okay, well, here's the deal. I need to read it for myself, and I will. But let's assume that you're right. And then we went on and had a conversation about how it's not really that big a deal what he's claiming would happen if he were right. And so the conversation quickly turned from, well, okay, well, it's not that big a deal, so then I'm just going to call you names and, because that's how a losing conversation goes. Okay, I'm not going to talk the talking points anymore. I'm going to call you names and walk away. But I did go and I looked up the act. Matter of fact, I have it right here, and I also have the Pappy glasses because I am a man of a certain age. So I pulled up the act. Although, I gotta say, I couldn't find it anywhere that didn't also have some additional documentation from those who are explaining why it's such a dangerous thing. But I pulled up the act, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing to you because that's gonna be very time consuming. But I went through and I read it, and I found the things that are pertinent. For example, the fact that these provisions will apply to all new registrants across the United States, including already registered voters who update their registration as a result of a move or a name change or a party switch. So it will apply to people who are registering to vote. That's what they're talking about. The act will affect when you register to vote. You will have to provide certain documentation. That's what everybody's been saying. I don't think anybody is confused about that. I think people are misunderstanding part of that, and I will come back to that. The next thing that I found is a valid photo identification issued by a federal, state, or tribunal government, such as a standard driver's license, that does not comport with the above. Basically, it says a valid driver's license that does not say where you were born, which none of them do, will need to be accompanied by a certified birth certificate, a birth certificate that comes from your state, from the state capital that you were born in, that has a state seal. So a certified state birth certificate, or an extract from a United States hospital record of birth. So your birth certificate could come from the hospital you were born at, or a final adoption decree showing a person's name and their place of birth was within the United States. So, yeah, your birth certificate. Okay, this is part of what people were saying, but this is also where people are going, well, if your birth certificate and your name on your birth certificate is different from your name on your driver's license, like you got married, okay, but what people are missing is there's another state certificate that happens when you get married if you change your name. And that is a marriage certificate. And it also bears a state seal. So just remember that. So that's what they're not telling you. And if you go to get your driver's license, you also have to have birth certificate and marriage certificate and social security card. So you've already gone through this situation if you're a married woman to get your driver's license. So it didn't keep you from getting that. So it's not going to keep you from doing this either. So this fear mongering, it's not going to, if you can still drive, you'll be able to vote. As long as you're an American citizen, because you've already proven that already once, and more on that in a minute. The SAVE Act would gut voter registration by mail and online. This is true. And this is not a problem. Reason being, mail and online are not secure. So, okay, do that. The whole purpose is to secure who gets to vote. So let's not let people mail it in and do it online. And if someone just cannot do it any other way, then yeah, maybe there needs to be something special here. But the majority don't need to do it this way. Let's not just allow everyone to do it by mail or online, because that's not a secure way of doing it. The SAVE Act would also require individuals to bring, it's DPOC, I gotta find that, but it's basically the proving documents to vote if they live in a state with the same day voter registration. Basically what that says is, if you live in a state that allows you to register on the same day that you vote, and you choose to procrastinate and not register ahead of time and wait till the day of, then yes, you're gonna have to carry some extra documentation with you. That's on you. So yeah, that's your fault, but it's still documentation that you should have in your possession as a responsible adult. ID, birth certificate, marriage certificate if you're a married woman. And maybe not all that, because the next thing that I found is, where is it? Did I not highlight that? Well, I didn't. But another part of it that I found is directed not at the citizen, but at the Social Security Administration. Because part of the act says that the Social Security Administration will be required to make a list of the citizens whose Social Security number, the citizens with Social Security numbers, and the non-citizen Social Security numbers. So basically, the Social Security Administration will be required to list all legal citizen Social Security numbers, so all those who are legal to vote, in one place, send that to where they live, so that the registration committees, the people in charge of registration, know this Social Security number is a citizen, this Social Security number is not. So while it's not stated in the bill that you can do this, if the Social Security Administration does what by law would be required of them, then your ID and Social Security number should still be sufficient as identification that you are a legal citizen. But what I really want to get to is this. In 1993, now understand that in 1993, there was the National Voter Registration Act, or the Motor Voter Act. Now, the SAVE Act does modify this exact act that I'm reading from, but it doesn't get rid of it. It modifies what they can ask for in this act, but if you have updated your driver's license or moved from one state to another or obtained a driver's license since about 2005, ever since they started putting that little star and done the real ID thing, you've already dealt with the changes that are in here when you got your driver's license. So according to the Motor Voter Act of 1993, every state that has a voter registration must offer the ability to register to vote when you obtain your driver's license. So the majority of the United States citizens have the opportunity to register to vote when they get or renew their driver's license, which means that almost everybody has already dealt with their registration to vote. Only 6 states don't have, or only 6 states were exempt from this act, and that was North Dakota, Idaho, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Of those 6 states, 5 of them opted to do it anyway because it was the easiest thing. They saw it and they said, that makes sense. So 5 of them did it anyway. So 49 states give you the option to register to vote at the time that you renew your driver's license. The only one that did not was North Dakota. And the reason they didn't is because North Dakota has no voter registration, which I'm sure will change based on this act, because you have to register and you have to be a legal citizen. So they will probably come up to standard with everybody else and do it at the time that you get your driver's license. But I can't say that for certain because I don't know that. I didn't study that. But 49 states, that means, before I get rid of the pappy glasses, that means that of the entire United States population, 783,900 people, that's total estimated population of North Dakota. That's not married women, that's not adult women, that's not even adults. That's total population, total estimated population of North Dakota. That's the amount of people that may be affected by the SAVE Act, that might have to do something completely different than they've done before in order to secure their right to vote. The other 49 states have already been doing this or had this available to them every time they have voted, or every time they have gotten their driver's license, every time they've renewed it or obtained a new driver's license or whatever, changed from one state to another, every time since 1993. And they have done it with the new documentation requirements ever since the Real IDs have come out in 2005-ish. I don't remember the exact date on that. But if you in the last 10 years at least have changed states, gotten a new ID, gotten married, done any of these things, you're already doing what the SAVE Act requires you to do just to get your driver's license. And if you declined to register to vote, then you're the only reason that you didn't register to vote at that time. Or it's because you were underage and you're going to have to register when you hit 18, but you've already gone through the exact same process just to get that ID so that you can drive a vehicle. You've already done it. You didn't lose your ability to drive. You didn't lose your ability to do anything else. It's fear-mongering. It's fear-mongering so that some people can protect voter fraud. Period. That is all in the world this is. And now you know. Now you have the exact information of what it is. And if the politics part of this is all you're concerned about, then you can go ahead and stop the video right here because I know it's already getting long. But I'm going to go into a faith side of this as well, because this is very reminiscent, especially the tie-in to women, of how certain groups have treated the Bible and religion and relationship with Jesus and just the whole idea of Christianity for years as well. So people have made out Christianity as though it makes women second-class citizens, lesser than, property of, or because they cherry-pick the Bible. They take little pieces here and there, and they try to turn it into something bigger than it is. And I've got a lot of information that I'm not going to try to actually go into all of it. But what I will say is this. If you look at the Old Testament, there's a lot of things in the Old Testament that do very much look like that. There's a lot of things from the cultures all over, not just not specifically from the Hebrew culture, but the cultures of the world that are described in the Bible that do very much make women second class. What you need to understand is there is descriptive stories in the Bible and there's prescriptive stories in the Bible. Just because the Bible describes what's going on in the world doesn't mean it's saying you should do these things. There are certain things in Scripture that say you should do these things, and that is prescriptive. If you take the law of ancient Israel and you look at it versus the laws of all the cultures around it, the laws toward women, the laws toward everything are almost infinitely more moral and better treatment of every group than the laws of everyone else around them. And no, a lot of them still don't look the same way that we think that they should in Western culture and in our eyes today and in our soft whatever. But when you stack the law God gave to Moses against the law of everyone around them, they are night and day. They are totally different. And yet, people won't look at that. They just want to go, well, look at this little thing here. This looks really bad. I want you to focus on this. Ignore all this around it. Just look at this. People want to go in the New Testament. They want to talk about how Paul talks about women, like in 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 12. Women should learn quietly and submissively. Do not let women teach men, or Paul says, I do not let women teach men or have authority over them. Let them listen quietly. 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, where Paul's talking about leaders in the church. He talks about a man should be husband to one wife. In verse 12 of that same verse, he talks about a deacon and he talks about a man and his relationship to his wife. And in Titus, he talks about an elder. In Titus 1:6, he talks about an elder. He talks about a man and his relationship to his wife. All of these references talk about men and their faithfulness to their wife. And so people point to those as men are the leaders of the church and women are not. Or maybe it's just Paul using a literary tool to speak to a culture that put men first and not women, because that's who surrounded him. And that's who he was writing to. And he wanted the people to understand what he was talking about, so he didn't use 150 extra words to explain where he can use two. Because he didn't want to overcomplicate the message, he just wanted to talk to the audience that he had. And the expectation was that as the generations went on, we would be smart enough to understand that. Clearly, the expectation was wrong, because we're not. Because we fight over stupid stuff. I lost my spot. You go to 1 Corinthians 14, 34 through 35. Paul talks about women should be silent during the church meetings. It is not proper for them to speak. They should be submissive, just as the law says. If they have questions, they should ask the husbands at home, for it is improper for women to speak to the church in the church meetings. And people look at that, they're like, see, Paul says they can't even talk in public. Okay, have you read the rest of that chapter? Do you even know the context of what he's talking about there? Because if you go look at everything around that, what Paul's talking about right there is the whole church in Corinth was operating in spiritual gifts, in legitimate spiritual gifts, but they were operating over the top. It was like they were just pulling out all the stops and in full-on Holy Spirit movement mode every time they got together. And there's nothing wrong with moves of the Spirit, but they were so wild in their meetings that when people would walk in that were not part of the congregation, they could not hear the gospel because they were it was so bracing that they were not able to hear what was going on, because they walked in and it was just such a shock to them that they would just leave. And so Paul was calling them down on a litany of things, saying, you got to stop doing this and stop doing this and stop doing this and stop doing this, because those among you who are not of you are not staying to become part of you. It's okay to do this when it's just you, but when the outsiders come in, pardon me, when the outsiders come in, you got to recognize that, and you've got to tailor to them so that they can become part of us. Because right now, you're creating an echo chamber where only you are welcome, and they walk in and they don't feel welcome. This is part of that, because in that culture, women didn't speak in public. Women certainly didn't stand up and take the attention in a public gathering. It's not he's saying that women shouldn't speak in any church gathering. He's saying when this culture, who's not part of this church, walks in here and a woman does that, they're gone. They're leaving, because that's not proper in this culture, and you lose them. See, when you go back and you put in to context all of what Paul says, then all of a sudden you start to see things in other places. Like also in 1 Corinthians, a couple chapters back in chapter 11 and verse 5, he says, but a woman dishonors her head if she prays or prophesies without a covering on her head, but for this is the same as shaving her head. Now forget about the covering of the head. What I want to point out here is he's still pointing out that a woman may publicly prophesy or pray. Now again, in the culture, it would have been dishonoring among those people if a woman were to not have on some kind of a head covering, or if she were to shave her head. So again, there's a cultural aspect to it, but he's saying right here, I do expect women to speak up in public. I do expect women to exercise their spiritual gifts in public in certain instances. Just like I expect men to exercise their spiritual gifts in public when appropriate. But it's not always appropriate. You go to, where am I at here? Romans 6, 1-7. Paul commends Phoebe as a deacon. Oh, but wait, that other verse says a man. Okay, Priscilla is a teacher. Well, women can't preach and teach. He said that. Okay. I'm going to say this wrong probably, but I'm going to pronounce it phonetically. Junia is called outstanding among apostles. Apostles? A woman apostle? Certainly not Paul, right? But it's right there. It's right there, not just in Scripture, but in Scripture from Paul. So yeah, the same Paul who said the other things in another time is either contradicting himself, or we need to learn context. And we need to learn not to look at one little thing that somebody takes out of context, just like in a political instance, and says, look at this, it's bad, they're trying to take your rights away. But rather we need to take it, put it back in the context of the whole piece, the whole document, and go, you know what, I don't think that's really what it says. Because see, when I read these things, when I read them in context, and important note, this is me. I'm not saying this is scriptural truth. I'm saying this is what I feel here, and I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I am infallible. But what I believe here is two things. One, in some cultures, women speaking in public gatherings would be scandalous and disruptive to the point of destroying the opportunity for the Holy Spirit to move and the gospel to be shared effectively. Even today, there are places that a woman speaking up in a public gathering would be absolutely inappropriate to the people who are not already part of that church. So much so that they would get up and leave and never receive the gospel. And two, and most pertinent today, and most pertinent in Western society, I think, I believe Paul was warning, or I believe it could at least be taken as a warning to men against becoming complacent in doing their God-given job to be the leaders in the faith. To paraphrase, or to put it in my own words, I don't allow the men to sit idly by and put the burden on their wives to fulfill the responsibility of the church. It's the men's job to lead. Because how much do we see that very thing today? In the church, in the home, in all aspects of life. Because we've become complacent and lazy, and we've decided they don't only need to lead the home, but they need to lead everywhere because, hey, I worked all day and I'm tired. Yeah? Get off your butt. Get off your butt, because I don't allow women to carry the whole burden. It's your job to pick it up and to carry it and to lead them. And it's their job to be a helper to you. That's how God created it. Read Genesis. The point is, for both parts of this post, people are willing, for both parts of this post, that people are willingly, should have practiced this a little more. People are willing to knowingly misrepresent information to fit their narrative without any regard for what's actually best for those hearing them. Their only concern is the power of their own platform. To one point, it's to preserve a power base at the polls. On the other point, simply put, misery loves company. If I'm going to hell, I'm taking you with me. My question to them is, why don't you change your course instead? Don't worry about my course, but come with me. It's better where I'm going. I promise you. Guys, I know this was a long one, and it's, I don't know. Again, it's a subject I don't really like, and I'm going to do several of them, and maybe they'll get better. But I hope you got information you needed out of it. And as far as I'm concerned, it lays to rest the whole Save Act thing. It lays to rest the whole Christianity subjugates women and treats them like crap thing. And if it doesn't, then you're not listening. We'll see you on the next one.